Stay here.
There it goes.
Stay here with me.
Oh, okay. So you have this huge video on your other one, I think. Maybe. You may have 2 files on there. But
Maybe.
okay. So go
Okay, so that one's started.
That one's
rolling.
live.
And did you see where go is on the other one?
The other one we've got, it's really yellow because it picks up differently.
Okay.
So,
So we're gonna get some light before it goes record.
yeah, I'm going to throw more light on it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
I
and
like that you're all ready.
ooh, oh, I have a nice light. That is. Yeah, we'll be.
Does that help?
We'll be editing this. Let's
Yeah.
just throw it out there like this.
It turned off again.
Oh,
so
shit. Yeah.
It's thinking. There we go. Yeah, that is less yellow.
Okay. And record, I think, is where your thumb is, if I remember correctly. It's red button.
Ah, look at that.
Okay.
Ah, we
So now-
are live.
All right.
I got my nose running. There we go.
All right. So I guess we're going with the name we got.
Yeah. What is the name we got?
We are Rat.
Rat.
Women Rise Against Trump.
Ah.
Sounds like a rat to me.
Yeah. I will agree
All
to
right.
that title.
So we are Rat. My name is Missa Earthwalker. My history is medicine and construction. Fascinating
That is
combination.
a combination.
It's a good
It
combination.
is a very good combination, and I spend decades researching all kinds of medical information. So I am the researcher, and I believe Trump is a very dangerous human being, and I have brought information to discuss as to why I think that way. And you?
All right. Hi. Oh, there's 2 camera lenses to
There
look
are.
at.
Which
I'll
one
look
do you
at-
look at?
I'll just look
One
in
eye on
between.
each.
Right?
My name is Donna. I am a Jax, Jax, because I'm in on the gender neutrality of all things and mistrix of none. I have a degree in theater. I have a lot of improv experience, almost 25 years of improv comedy and improv acting experience. And I've done all sorts of things. I've waited tables. I've taught comedy defensive driving. I used to read the encyclopedia for fun when I was a child. I work as a standardized patient, which is basically a person who pretends like they're sick so student doctors can learn to do what they do. And I'm sure there's about 9 other things I do. Basically, I'm really good at talking out of my ass. So the opinions herein are probably questionably informed, but hopefully thought-provoking. If you have an issue with what I said, please direct your comments to me in a very constructive way, because I ain't got no time for the name column.
There you go.
Amen. I am Gwen Lurie. I am an actress. I raise alpacas. I have also served in the United States Marine Corps and have been a truck driver, horse trainer, accountant, all sorts of very strange things that have led me all around the world. So I have seen a lot of different cultures, and I've seen what they do right and what they do wrong. So I am the emotional one. I am an actress. I can emote. And I have very firmly held opinions. And somebody that has dodged the draft 5 times with miraculously resolving bone spurs doesn't seem like someone of honor and integrity to me. And as a Marine, that's kind of important. So that's what I will bring to the rat discussion.
We're talking about credentials? Oh my gosh.
We have better credentials
We
in this
do.
room
We do.
But
than
the
what are
reason,
present in the White House administration
Yes.
at this point.
but also the reason we have not run for that position, part 1 from probably not having enough money ever to do something like that, is because we have enough self-awareness to know that we may not be qualified for that position. And
Right.
that, I think, is the most dangerous aspect of
I
this
agree.
man, is
Biggest
a
sticking point.
lack of self-awareness or anything else around him that extends past its first degree direction to him. There is an entire lack of empathy. And he may have a range of emotions: happy, sad, angry, sensitive.
Horny.
But, yeah, well,
Self-absorbed.
yeah. But I think that lack of looking beyond 2 degrees is what's most dangerous.
Right, I agree.
In so many ways, he presents to me as a 4-year-old. I don't think whatever the parenting situation was, whatever the educational situation was, I don't think that he was ever taught to share, to tell the truth, to take responsibility for your decisions, to face the consequences when you make a bad decision. So we are dealing with, very literally, a man-child that really needs a timeout session and his butt beat.
And I think that's a really good place to start what you were saying, that he has no self-control. He's like a child.
Mhm.
He's never had to be accountable for himself. He's learned this behavior, I believe, by his father. And I think this is a good place to start with the New York Times article that came out October 2nd of 2018, which was written by Suzanne Craig, Russ Buettner, and David Barstow. This has been researched for hundreds and thousands of documents that these three have come together. And it will let you know and let you see. If you've not read it, I encourage you to read the whole thing. I will not be reading the whole thing. We will be just doing blurbs of it, but it will bring you to an understanding of what Gwen said and why we think he is basically a spoiled child who has not been able to learn how to control himself, is because his father fed him this way. His father groomed him to be this way. Now, Fred Trump cannot defend himself because he's no longer on this planet. But let's go ahead and get started and talk about what we found in the New York Times.
By the way, I just want to acknowledge that this woman came in with hard research, and again, talking out of my ass. So I congratulate your hard research.
I can't help it. I've spent years in school for medicine, and it's just research. So the New York Times, by Susan Craig, David Barstow, and Russ Buettner, October 2nd, this came out in the New York Times. The president has long sold himself as a self-made billionaire, but a Times investigation found that he received at least $413 million in today's dollars from his father's real estate empire, much of it through tax dodge in the 1990s. Now, the reason I say tax dodge is because I want you to remember this, because Fred Trump, unbeknownst to himself, maybe he did this because he did not believe in paying taxes. He didn't see why anybody that would be a self-made millionaire should have to pay taxes.
Taxes are just for the little people.
Yes, correct. So he says. So he taught his son how to embezzle money, how to look at ways of enhancing his own income and his family's income without paying taxes. So, in saying that, I'm going to go ahead. President Trump participated in dubious tax schemes since the 1990s, including instances of outright fraud that greatly increased the fortune he received from his parents, says the New York Times. Trump, proclaiming himself as a self-made billionaire, has long insisted that his father, Fred C. Trump, provided almost no financial help. Now, let me explain something to you and why that is not true. Times investigation reveals that Mr. Trump, not President Trump, I can't seem to call him that, received the equivalent today of at least $413 million from his father's real estate empire, starting when he was 3 years old.
And we thought, asking for $5 a week for an allowance was
Right.
a little bit.
I
What's
didn't
an
even get that.
allowance?
I didn't even get that. I'll tell you this. When I was in 8th grade, I didn't eat lunch at school for almost an entire year. I ate everybody else's leftovers
Yes.
to save up money to be able to go buy probably several 45s, showing my age, and a couple of full
33 albums?
yeah.
Ah.
I know.
Sweet.
Woo! But yeah, continue, because all of this is feeding into some of my opinions of why the lack of empathy is present.
Okay. Much of the money, as we said, came from his parents dodging taxes. He and his siblings set up, now this is what I find incredibly interesting, is he and his siblings, along with his father, set up sham corporation to disguise millions of dollars in gifts from their parents. Records and interview shows. Records indicate that Mr. Trump helped his father take improper tax deductions worth millions more. He also helped formulate a strategy to undervalue his parents' holdings by hundreds of millions of dollars in tax returns. These maneuvers met with little resistance from the IRS. The Times found the President parentals, Fred and Mary Trump, transferred well over $1 billion in wealth to their children, which could have produced a tax bill of at least $550 million under the 55% tax rate. But the Trumps paid a total of $52.2 million, which is roughly 5%. Okay?
Mm.
And this from a man who's all about nationalism.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to make America great again. But I'm not willing to do my share to do that.
We have to make it great again by lying and cheating and be deceitful. I don't consider that a great America. I consider that a very sad state of affairs.
Well, I think part of this comes from, and we can really definitely trace that, of the rise of the celebration of corporate thinking and corporate behavior in this world. And this is not a statement to say that every single corporation is a bad thing.
No.
But we can very, clearly look back to leading into the Reagan area and there beyond. There is just, this was the epitome to reach. And if you go way back, the idea of manifest destiny is part of that. There's something that is owed to me, and I can go out and get that. As the rise of corporations, of mechanization came into play, those that were in charge knew they could use the lessers to try to gain as much information as possible. And that attitude of convenience has led everyone to kind of base their thought on, there is something owed to me and I can always achieve to be better than what I have. Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking about better as a person, such as being better educated or better skilled. I'm talking about there is always the possibility to extend beyond my station, because the station that I am at, it is not extremely wealthy. The station I am at is not admirable. Right. So it is looked down upon. So there's always a drive to look ahead. Mm-hmm. And when we came out of World War II, the country had just gone through a great collective trauma where we felt the sense of community, and having that comfort of knowing that we had support of each other for a while was when folks started to really make that drive of getting ahead. That area of deprivation has led to a search for comfort. And then it was the 70s and 80s where we really started to see the celebration of the embodiment of wealth. If you think about the movies of the time, like Wall Street, and even let's go back to, it was, past, but American Psycho is just, oh my goodness, and I mean, obviously he's a terrible thing, but it's a great parody of that embodiment of just brutal getting ahead. And what this leads to is, I think, the way a lot of those that are living off of their esteemed wealth that started with a stable foundation and never had to depend on true assistance or scramble for what they do or make do, has passed down to those of a less stable station that taxes are a thing to be avoided because they're taking away your money, first degree side, your money, instead of they're using my money to give to someone else, as opposed to we are each putting in our part. A little bit of a democratic socialist here. We are all putting in our part to create a stable foundation that everyone can use should they need to do it. What I would like to see today is if there was a reintroduction of the idea of noblesse oblige. Now, of course, we're talking about centuries ago, where we had truly a downtrodden class of people, and those that were of royalty were very, very high. There was no middle class,
which is why all of our ancestors came to America,
Right.
because in Europe, in Russia, you could not leave your social standing.
Yeah.
You come to America because there is no aristocracy. There is no glass ceiling for every person in the nation.
We are supposed to be the land of equality,
Yeah.
and the
Yes.
land of the free, and everybody has a choice and a chance to build their own empire.
Yeah. And since we've stretched that equality, what we don't see is the upper echelons having a moral obligation to take care of those
Right.
lesser than them. It is all self-feeding, as opposed to we are taking care of those that we build up on.
Right.
Especially when corporations are given citizen rights.
Yes.
Mhm.
So let's scream through this really quick, and then we can talk about it, because we have like 3 different topics.
I don't know
tonight
that
to
we're going to
discuss
get
it.
through all
We
of
may
it.
not get through it all. This may be it.
Yeah.
for
We
tonight.
don't want to
There's
kill
a-
these people.
No,
There's
we
a
don't
lot
want
of
to.
history
There's a
in
lot of
this.
history. So I'm just gonna I've got certain things highlighted. I do highly encourage you to go read the New York Times with Suzanne Craig, Russ Butner, and David Barstow on October 2nd, 2018 is when they came out. So the Times finding raised a new question about Trump's refusal to release his taxes. Of course, that has always been
That's a
the
good
issue.
question.
We would like to see your taxes. Oh, and your birth certificate too, please.
Yes.
According to tax experts, it is unlikely that Trump would be vulnerable to criminal prosecution for helping his parents evade taxes, because the act happened too long ago and are past the statute of limitations. There is no limit. However, because of where was I?
Statute of
Yeah, the
limitations.
statute of limitations. Because of the statute of limitations, his parents cannot be prosecuted. But there is no limit on civil fines for tax fraud. So with that, Trump could be prosecuted for tax fraud. And civilly, and with this information that just recently came out, he should be. The investigation also draws on tens of thousands of pages on documents, records, bank statements, financial audits, accounting ledgers, cash disbursement reports, invoices, and canceled checks. So this is not just a 20-page document. This is thousands of pages of information that has gone through by these 3 people.
And been thoroughly vetted.
Yes. Most notably, the documents include more than 200 tax returns from Fred Trump, where his companies and various Trump partnerships and trusts were involved. Mr. Trump, I can't say president.
That's
I
fine.
won't.
Thank you.
Mr.
Fine.
Trump's
You're using better
version-
words than I would use for him. So.
I'm trying to be polite.
Yes,
Correct.
good job.
Of how he got rich was the master deal maker who broke free from his father's tiny outer borough operations and gave him $1 million, which he said he was going to have to pay back. Which we all know this is not so true. It is into $10 billion empire.
You're telling us that he lied?
I
No
might
way.
be suggesting that he is like misinforming us. I know, it's so sad.
What if he's just not aware enough to know he's
I don't know.
lying?
It could be. But, you know, the handful of journalists and biographers, notably Wayne Barrett, Gwenda Blair, David K. Johnson, and Timothy L. O'Brien, have challenged this story. Oh my goodness, go figure.
Oh.
Mr. Trump piggybacked off his father's connection to gain a foothold in Manhattan real estate. Can you believe that he would do that? Of $14 million. Okay. Fred once helped his son make a bond payment on an Atlantic City casino. See, this is what cracks me up because, okay, Trump owed the casino money. Okay, this was his casino. It was going to go bankrupt. He knew it. So what did Daddy do?
Bail him out.
He went in. I mean, this is actually what he did. He went in and he bought $3.5 million worth of casino chips and walked out with them. He didn't even gamble. Which means, here you go, son, have another 3.5 to keep your head afloat. He took
Nice dad.
I wish I had one like that.
Man.
Yeah.
So, and then it goes, by age 3, Mr. Trump was earning $200,000 a year in today's dollars. By the time he was 8 years old, his father had made him a millionaire. And by the time he was 17, his father had given him part ownership in a 52-unit apartment building.
Damn. All
Okay.
my father ever made me was a Mormon.
Right?
What this is all saying here is that
Trump is dishonest. He lies. He doesn't have any self-respect. He's a hypocrite. I mean, we could go on and on and on, but bottom line is I am going to invite you to read this for yourself because I could sit here for the next hour and read it to you, but that's not why we're here.
what this also speaks of is he comes from stability.
Yes.
And I think those of us that are living in instability, or a lot of folks now that because of various changes in income, even since the bubble, the housing bubble of 2007, or be it the .com crash, whichever one you want to look at, they can speak to the thought of going from a sense of safety and
Being able to pay your
having the net
bills, being able to go out to dinner once in a
to
while.
just having the constant stress of never knowing if it's going to quite come together. And what this foundation of stability allows you to move forward, to have an interpretation of yourself, that you have a fine standing in the world, that you have a right to have and keep what you have. And that's what this speaks to. That's part of what has built us to a person that had no qualifications and then just thought, well, I can do this. And every day he eschews information or learning or advice from those that are more learned than him, unless they will do the job for him, and thinks that he can just step forward with this overinflated confidence. And I think this really is the story of entitlement that goes, particularly we're piecing apart white entitlement, white male entitlement. I think it all goes to all this.
Personally, I don't personally care if Trump's father made him a millionaire. Great. He had the money, pass it on to your kids. That's what we all want to do. We want our children to have more and do better than what we've ever done. If I was a million or a billionaire, I will be tomorrow. My children and my grandchildren will get that.
Yeah.
Okay? That's
But
what
you
we
will
do.
also pay
But I will be
those
honest
funds
about
to
it.
the tax, to the
Yes.
government,
Yes.
to support our infrastructure, to
Yes.
support our military, to
give
keep
Yes.
these
back.
people in office.
To make
because
sure that our
we are
world is
paying
taken care
them.
of properly, and to make sure that the
Mhm.
United States has what it needs.
Mhm.
I am going to read something else off the New York Times information. The one thing that really stood out to me as far as Trump passing information onto his son and money onto his son, what friend Trump did. The one thing that really struck me, that allowed me to go, okay, this is probably where he learned this behavior from. Okay, because we do learn from our parents. I mean, they're our first teachers. Our
Yes.
children are God in our eyes till we're a certain age, and then we judge them for the rest of their lives. So true. Okay, so the most overt fraud was all county building supply and maintenance. Okay, this is a building supply and maintenance company that Fred Trump and his children put together in 1992. All counties' ostensible purpose.
That was the year I joined the Marine Corps.
Was that when you joined the
Okay.
Marine Corps?
Sorry.
Right. Okay, what they did, it was all counties was a purchasing agent. They would buy stoves, they would buy refrigerators, they would buy heaters. What they did is boilers, anything that had to do with apartment buildings, the infrastructure of keeping an apartment or a house alive, how to keep it heated. And then they would buy this stuff, they would send it to all county building supply and maintenance. And because Fred Trump built these hotels and apartment complex for the underprivileged people.
Right. Low income housing.
Right, low income housing. So what they did is they created all county building supply and maintenance. They would buy these products, they would put them in their warehouse, and then they would charge the government $200 to $300 or $400 more dollars for each piece of equipment. And they said that's why they had to raise the rent, because this appliances cost so much. So they were actively creating fraud against the government since 1992. So instead, all counties siphoned millions, not just thousands, millions of dollars for Fred Trump's empire by simply marking up purchases already made by his employees.
And at the cost
of
of
the
American citizens
Yes.
struggling to make
Yes.
ends meet
Mhm.
that have been vetted and approved
Yes.
for low income housing
Yes.
who are living on top ramen.
Yes.
For people that think they are taking our money and giving it to someone else, this is people taking our money and giving it to themselves.
And that's one of the reasons I really had to stop and say, okay, I cannot just idly sit by and not say anything. I am a mother, I'm a grandmother, I am part Native American. I have been working in this country since I was 10 years old. Remember when we used to go pick strawberries and berries?
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah. That's how we ate in my house, was when we would go picking beans and berries and
My
strawberries.
newspaper route.
Right, and a newspaper route. Because we didn't have money. We didn't have people to feed us. I mean, I am so blessed that I actually was able to do those things. I'm grateful that I could go pick strawberries, and the fact that we had free lunches in schools, or else my family would not have eaten, period.
We cut asparagus
Yes.
in a small town in central Washington that nobody knows exists. And this community was all migrant workers. White people were a minority in that community in Sunnyside, Washington in 1980 when Mount St. Helens blew. But it was a district-wide mandate that during asparagus season, all of the schools would literally start 3 hours later because they knew all of the kids were out cutting the asparagus fields every morning. Because for asparagus, you have to cut it every morning.
Yes. Or else
And-
it goes to seed super quick.
Yeah.
So, we were out there cutting, and so many families really relied on the asparagus harvest in that area that the school district just said, yeah, no, we understand you have to feed your family. Go do that. And we went instead of a 45-minute class session in the middle school, we dropped down to a half-hour class session. And I don't know, I think maybe they switched classes or something, but they made it work because that was the population that was there.
Right.
And we all knew that we were working right beside migrant workers. And we understood and we learned from them. And I got my ass beat several times because I was dumb enough to pick and fight with a Mexican family. White people don't have the cousins that Mexicans have.
No, they have a lot of them.
They got a lot of cousins.
Wait, I don't know. I grew up Catholic. I got a lot of them.
It just keeps coming.
It's interesting listening to you talk because I feel like, as far as foundations, I feel like the privileged one in the group as far as a foundation. Now, my parents, my dad grew up on a dairy farm, and my mother grew up quite poor in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. They both, they were both only children, which I think allowed them a touch of advancement, that they both were able to go to college. That's where they met. That's where my dad was able to get his master's degree. And he has taught mathematics at the same junior college for almost 50 years. Now, where I fully acknowledge my privilege is that I again was an only child until I was 12. I'm the first of two only children, and I did not have to work as a child. My job as a child, because my father as an educator, I think understood and stressed this. My job as a child was to go to school. Nice. That was my responsibility. And I'm sure the fact that I am a barely employed creative right now is one of those things they just shake their head at. But the point being, just because I had that privilege, I had that stability of foundation, which I still do with my family. If I found myself in dire situations, I would still have somebody to fall back up on. I fully acknowledge that. But there was a lot of potted meat and white bread and hamburger helper at that time. There was living in a small house. There was getting our clothes at Kmart. I was lucky enough to buy my clothes new, but we got it from Kmart. Yeah. And I grew up with a lot of kids that made fun of you if you shopped at Kmart. And, there was, growing up of modest means in a very upper middle class town, you see that privilege that comes there. And I still acknowledge, even though I'm working like 7 jobs and they're all sporadic, and I have no health insurance or anything like that.
You probably pay a higher tax rate than the person that only has one job.
I think
because
so.
You do when you have a lot of part-time jobs. You pay
a lot
more.
of jobs, no benefits, because none of the jobs will.
Right.
And I can't believe I'm going to say this.
Do it.
I'm actually going to defend Mr. Trump just a little bit.
You're allowed to, because if somebody does something worthwhile, they should be commended for it.
I read a report probably 6 years ago, so well before this administration, that stated 40% of American families, and remember this was 6 years ago, were one catastrophe away from being homeless. Especially after the 80s, that time of, living on credit cards and trying to present to the world how wealthy you were, whether you were or not. Right. There's bills, there's mortgage, there's medical problems. And with insurance getting pulled back, a lot of these problems were actually instigated before Mr. Trump came into office. He did not inherit the best thing. The Republican Party refusing to work with President Obama made everything much worse.
Yes.
But the fact that still today, the last report I saw about 3 months ago now states that 60% of Americans are one catastrophe away from being homeless.
And that's a very sad and scary place to be.
Mm-hmm.
It is stressful.
Mm-hmm.
You want to know why there's hate. You want to know why there's rage.
Mm-hmm.
You want to know why there's this extreme reactivism. You're threatening somebody's home and family.
Yes. It's fear.
And there is nothing scarier than a threat to your home and family.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to an area that has seen war, that has gang violence, that is overrunning Honduras, you will do anything to save your family.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
You will give up your home, you'll give up your car, you'll give up your security. Apparently,
Yes.
you will walk 2,000 miles
Yes.
to save your family. And this is something that Trump is absolutely incapable of even fathoming.
Mm-hmm.
Well, since you brought that up,
Is this a smooth transition
It is.
into another
Oh my
topic?
God,
we
Ooh.
did it. Since you brought that up,
Well done.
let's talk about Honduras just a little bit. I know. It's a very scary time.
Yeah.
It
I
really
posted
is.
on Facebook today
Mhm.
because my husband and I were discussing it. Well, we've been discussing it for the last week,
Mhm.
but I hadn't actually put the little pieces together. Mac is my brain. I acknowledge that. He is much more learned than I am. But he pointed out, gee, if we can send these troops to America's southern border,
Mhm.
where they will only be allowed to do support mission because they cannot do law
Right.
enforcement, God bless the Constitution,
Mm-hmm.
why couldn't we just send them to Honduras to make it like not such a hellhole so the people wouldn't have to leave?
Do you know that in Honduras, currently, Honduras is the most hate-filled place against women? Currently, there is a woman murdered in Honduras every 16 hours.
Mm.
Every 16 hours. Think about that.
That's going to end the civilization.
Okay?
When I hear things like that, it seems like folks that are very much on the side of why do they want to come here? Why they think they're just gonna get everything for free. And the fact is, the reason they would walk that far, you've got to imagine something to where walking 2,000 miles sounds like a better option than staying where you are. What fearful thing, what threat would drive you to walk, as I read in an article somewhere, basically the distance from New York City to California?
2,500 miles.
Would any of us walk that far out of fear for the safety of our family?
Yes, we would if we were under circumstances that were necessary, that deemed. Now, President Trump, I can't believe I called him that. Mr.
Good
Trump, thank you, is saying, what has he said? That there are,
What hasn't
he
he
said?
Well, yeah, we'll have
That
to drink
there
more, sorry.
are gangs, that there are terrorists.
Middle Eastern terrorists.
Middle Eastern
Oh.
terrorists. In this group of people heading towards the U.S. borders. That is not the case.
Oh, but you don't forget my favorite part.
What's your favorite part?
Smallpox.
Oh,
They're
smallpox
bringing
and
smallpox.
epilepsy. No, smallpox and
Leprosy.
Epilepsy.
Epilepsy.
Yeah, that could bring that
Well,
smallpox and
Wow,
Leprosy.
leprosy.
is epilepsy
Right?
contagious
It-
now?
It could be. It could be.
Just
So-
give him a moment.
Right. So here is this man saying, first of all, that there's terrorists in this group, that there's Middle Eastern terrorists, that there's gangs. Well, I am sure there might be some gangs infiltrated in there, of course. He's talking about their strong young men. Well, these are strong young men trying to find work so they can send money home to their families.
I want you to name me one major kitchen in a restaurant in America that does not have a worker from Mexico, Central America, or South America employed within. I doubt you will
Okay.
find one.
I'm going to
Oh,
say
can-
something right now that if it gets me in trouble, that is fine because I am a grown woman. I know without a doubt because I work with them. I have my crew, I co-run a roofing company. I also am a herbal practitioner and a nutritionist. I have my own business, but in the construction field, now mind you, I've been in the construction field for over 20 years. In the construction field currently, the majority of the construction workers, the roofers, the builders are Hispanic, and I can guarantee you that 75% of those people do not even have green cards. They come to this country because they want a better life for their family. They stay there, they have their children here, which
They are contributing members of our
they
society.
pay taxes here.
And they
Believe
do
me.
not get them back.
No.
because
I
they
do
not file
payroll
tax
for the
returns.
company, so I know these people pay taxes. I pay
And
taxes too.
Well, they're paying taxes,
They're paying
social
Social
security,
Security,
state taxes, in
and they
those states that have
don't
them.
get it back. Which, with Trump trying to create it to where, first of all, our children that are born here, guess what? It is this Freedom Act. Any child that is born here, the 14th Amendment. All right, let me put on my 14th Amendment.
Before we move on, we really have to say,
Yes.
Trump got permission from Border Patrol to bring in 150 migrant workers to work at Mar-a-Lago this year.
Oh my
He
goodness.
could not hire Americans to run his own resort. He had to bring in migrant workers.
So he's willing to bring in migrant workers as long as it's going to make him money.
And this is where it comes back to how the man is incapable to seeing beyond one degree of him. Because not only will he use people to the point that will benefit him directly the most, he will also say whatever he needs to get the most popularity and attention his way as he can. And this is the hypocrisy. I don't even know if it's a conscious hypocrisy. It's just him having the single focus of, I will do whatever I need to get attention and comfort. And that is the classic definition of a crazy maker. If you've ever read Julia Cameron's, what is the name of it? The Artist's Way. The Artist's Way.
The Artist's Way.
Artist.
Well, and he even said last week on 2 different news programs, they were questioning him about, this plethora of falsehoods and lies and just outright bullshit, really. And he said, "Oh, I always tell the truth when I can."
When he can. I try to at my best when I can.
Yeah. And if you don't know the facts, if you don't understand the Constitution, if you don't understand the rule of law and the law of checks and balances, if you don't understand anything about the Uniform Code of Military Justice, UCMJ, much easier to say, that dictates what American troops can do, what they can do on our soil, what they could be doing to help in disaster areas around the world and are not, which I don't understand. But he doesn't even want to know.
No.
They try to give him reports, and his own staff people say, well, no, he didn't read the report.
Well, I want to touch back on him having to go and have immigrants come and work for him. Okay?
Yeah, because that one just...
Okay?
Yeah.
Because Trump, as I firmly believe, is not just a bigot, he is very racist.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So in that, he is bringing people in that he knows are not legal, and yet they work for him. And the reason I'm going back to that is because in 1980, Trump's castle, the casino, Kip Brown was a former employee, and this is what he had to say. When Donald and Ivana came to the casino, the bosses would order all the black people off the floor. They would have to go in the back and wait until the Trumps left because he didn't want to see them on the floor. Okay? So it boggles my senses in so many ways how we have allowed this person to be in a position of power that, and was on a 3-hour phone conversation and trying not to argue with a friend of mine about this. She goes, well, everybody makes up their own mind. Mm-hmm. Well, yes, everybody does make our own mind. We do choose how we behave. But when you have somebody in the highest power, in the highest office of the United States, who is obviously a bigot, who is obviously racist, who is obviously a misogynist, who obviously thinks women are much lesser than he is, it incites other people to follow suit. It incites those who are Trump followers, Trump believers, or just those who are a little mentally off out into the right or left field. It encourages them to say, oh, well, my president grabs a woman's pussy. Oh my gosh, I just said that. So why can't I? Because the president does it and that's okay. No, it is not okay.
And we're taught that anybody can be president.
Yes.
That's one of those dreams.
Especially for our generation.
Yes. And women are taught from the time we're very little, and thank goodness this is changing. I mean, I'm almost 60 years old, and I was taught very, very young age, don't rock the boat.
Yes.
Don't say anything. Keep it to yourself. It'll go away. It wasn't any much of a big deal. Well, I'm sorry, when somebody grabs your crotch, it's a big deal.
Well, and I worked waitressing long before I ever joined the Marine Corps. And
I bet you were so cute.
brown polyester was terrible. But
chafing.
I literally got to the point, if my butt was not slapped because I always work graveyard shift, I was hurt. Because I was taught that that's a compliment. If you are cute enough to get your butt slapped, especially, working right off of I-5, that's a compliment. That's like a tip. So if I had a night that I didn't get my butt slapped, God, that sucked. I must have really screwed things up.
And when you think about that, back on that now, what do you think? If you could go back and say to that young Gwen, what would you tell her?
Actually, I would do exactly the same thing. Because the societal norm at that time, that was it.
That was it.
To make that an issue would have literally just confused the holy hell out of the men doing it. My managers, nobody would have understood. But at that same time, they did not grab my boobs. They did not grab my crotch. If they had,
that would have been a totally different entity.
Yeah. And, the off-duty or undercover police that were in the restaurant on a regular basis would have stepped in. My manager would have stepped in. I had the one cook that was a veteran, and he was ready to thump heads if anybody crossed that line.
Right.
But in the mid-'80s, that line was way back here.
Yes, it was.
So the fact that we are now, we are not, our president is encouraging behavior that was not acceptable in the 80s against women and girls that we have told their entire life are worth more, are not sex objects, do not have to, wear the pearls and the pumps to clean the house and serve dinner when their honey gets home. I worked so hard to teach our daughter that we could do these things. We live on an alpaca ranch. When we moved here, we had to do fence repairs. So Ellie said, well, I can't use a skill saw. Dad won't let me use a skill saw. I'm a girl.
Time to learn.
Oh, guess how that went over with me. I'm like, oh, hells, no. We are not waiting for your dad to be off work. We're not making him fix this fence on his day off. And we're certainly not putting our animals at risk by having a broken fence.
Right.
Go grab the frickin' skill saw. You're going to learn.
Exactly.
And she's built 2 of the gates that are on the property that we still use today, 6 years later. So, I don't know. There was a point. I was going to bring it back around to being like educated and smart. But,
Yes.
About how in the 80s things were more socially acceptable. I mean, yes, getting your ass slapped was a compliment. Today, we all know that is not at all a compliment. Open the door for me, yes, because I am a woman and I do like that. I love being treated like a woman, but that does not mean to grab my boobs.
And
it
it's
doesn't
not
mean
being
to be
treated
crude.
like a woman.
It's about respect.
Respect
Yes.
and honor.
Yes.
And I open doors
Yes.
for the older generation.
Yes.
It would.
It's
I
respect.
feel guilty if I let that door close in front of an older gentleman.
Yes.
In the military, you open doors for officers. You just do. It's a sign of respect.
Exactly. It's
You
like
don't
being
have to
told,
pay
yes,
that
ma'am, in the
respect.
South.
Because I have a pussy.
Yes.
Yeah.
You don't have to pay me that respect because I'm cute. You have to pay me that respect because I'm a goddamn human and I deserve it.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that Trump does not. I don't even know if he understands that concept.
He can.
I
think
don't,
so.
because if he did understand it, I don't believe he would be so misogynistic. If he honestly understood
That a wife is a partner.
is a partner, is a human being, that women are meant to be respected, are meant to be cherished, just like men are. We are in this together. We are not separate. And I believe that Trump, from his behavior and his words, it's the writing on the wall. It is about divide and conquer. He is not trying to create a great America.
No.
He is trying to create
His
bigger
America.
Yes.
revenue for himself. He is trying to create Trump America.
Yeah.
And I cannot idly sit by and accept that at all.
Hey, ladies.
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
I think this would be a good time to wrap things up on that note. One more point?
One more point, because I remembered what my wrap was.
She remembered it.
I did. My very favorite sign from the March for Life
Yes.
that was held almost a year ago now. Young boy sitting on his dad's shoulder saying, I am not allowed to act like the president.
That's lovely.
That is lovely.
And at that, this is RAT, W-R-A-T, Women Rise Against Trump.
Women rise against Trump.
I'm not Trump.
There's a couple of cute dogs in the room.
There
There
are
are
Ginger,
May
Ginger, come here.
tails.
Come here.
And
Girls,
this
come
is
here.
our first
Come here.
broadcast coming
Come
to
here.
you
Oh, shit.
from
a dog in
Washington
my car.
State.
Here we go. Cute dogs.
Ginger.
This will make you happy after all this dark talk.
And it's not dark talk.
And this
We
is
have
Charlie
hope.
Girl.
Yay, Charlie girl.
So
No, she won't give me kisses
we
on
thank
camera.
you for joining us. We will see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hold it until we edit.
Oh, no, we have to give several buttons.
Oh, okay. Oh, puppy, are you tired? Are you ready to go back to your